Okay, so we're back and we want to take a look at Adobe Illustrator and specifically what we can do with it and how we navigate around it and what the tools look like and all that kind of stuff. So when we first launch Illustrator, we get this welcome screen. It provides us with some options to create a new file based on some standard sizes. We also can see the last several files that we've opened and worked with, so we can just quickly jump into a new file. I'm going to go ahead and reopen that file that I had open a minute ago. And cool, it seems to have lost where that file was. So give me a quick minute to go back in. Oops, wait, it's not, that's the wrong campus. That one there, and here we go. Okay, so I have a file open here. If you're following along at home, don't worry about having this file. We just want to get a file open because there's lots of tools and things in Illustrator that won't activate until you actually have a file open. So if you're following along at home, please just open up a file. It can just be a blank new file. That's fine, doesn't really matter. But here in Illustrator, start off with kind of a tour of the program. So if you're on Windows, up at the top here, we have what's called the application bar, where we have our menus, file, edit, object, type, etc. If you use a Mac, the menu is actually above the standard Mac area, and then this application toolbar with like the home button and this sort of stuff is directly below that. And it's probably worth noting here, obviously I am a Windows user, but there's nothing that we're going to do at any point, anytime in the semester where it matters whether you're using a Mac or a PC. So you're fine on either one. Obviously all of these videos are going to be showing the Windows interface. But as we go through, I will make sure to point out Mac keyboard shortcuts. And really, keyboard shortcuts are the only place where these programs are different. So don't worry, if you're a Mac user, you'll be able to follow along just fine. All right, below the application bar, we have what's called the control bar. And this control bar is actually context sensitive. That means that depending on the tool that you have selected, the options up on the toolbar, of course it's not going to do it for me right now because it hates me, but oh, there we go. Okay, that time it changed. I was going too fast earlier. So if I switch to the type tool, we can see we have type options over here. If I switch to one of these other tools, sometimes it'll change and sometimes it won't, but whatever. So the important point is this is context sensitive. The options you see up across the top here will change as you work through the tools, and we'll spend a lot of time coming up here and messing with the choices up here. So I'm not going to spend time going through them right at this moment. Going down the left-hand side is our toolbar. And the important things to note on the toolbar is, first of all, kind of some quick organizational things. Up at the top, we have some selection tools, and then we have a set of vector drawing tools, and then some tools to manipulate what you've drawn, and then some tools to change how you view what you've drawn. So kind of keep that organization in mind. It'll help you find the tools. Also note that most of these tools, there's a tiny little arrow in the bottom corner. That means there's actually additional tools hidden under this one. So if I come down to the rectangle tool and I press and hold my mouse button down, we'll see there's actually 5 tools in that same space with the rectangle tool. So this is another thing we're going to do a lot as we work through the class, coming in here and finding these other tools that are hidden under the existing tool. If I do select one of these tools, that top tool kind of changes to it, but I can press and hold and I can access the rest of the tools very easily. Okay, and then over on the left-hand side of the screen, we have our floating panels. And let me actually switch to the view that you probably have when you start out. Hold on, let me reset this to make sure that it's correct. Okay, so if you have just installed Illustrator and you've never used it before, this is probably what your screen will look like when you start up the program. And so what we've got here is 3 panels over on the left. We have a properties panel, a layers panel, and a libraries panel. We're not going to worry about what these do right at the moment. We will talk about them as we sort of work through them and need them in the class. Just be aware that this is where we do most of our work when we are in Illustrator. And all of these panels can be changed. If you have a smaller screen and this is taking up too much space, you'll see this tiny little double arrow up here in the corner. If I click on that, I can collapse this down to just icons and names. And I can even go further. If I move my mouse over the dark border of that and press and hold and drag, I can actually click them down to where they're just icons. And then if I want to access that panel, I can click on any one of them and the panel will actually pop up, but it's a floating panel that's going to kind of be in our way. Also, if I decide, oops, I really did want them open, this isn't really what I want to see, I can just come up and click on that double arrow again to expand it back out, and then I have the full panels. Whether you keep the panels open or not is really personal preference and dependent on how big your screen is. Also, you can change where these panels actually live. I'm going to come up here to the word properties, click and drag, and you can see I can tear that panel out and have it just float here on the screen. Once it's floating, I can really drag it around, move it wherever I want. Some designers work in bigger environments where they actually have multiple monitors, and so you can take all these panels and put them off on a separate monitor. So you have one monitor that's just the artwork you're working with, and the other monitor that's sort of the application. Once you have a panel floating like this, you can close it by clicking on the little X. But then if you do that and go, oops, I kind of wanted that, you can come over here to the window menu. And the window menu actually lists every single panel that is available in Illustrator. If there is a check mark next to the panel, it means the panel is currently open. If there isn't, then it's closed. And so I just closed the properties panel, so I want to come down here and select it to open it up. You will notice that when I reopen a panel, it opens where I left it. If I want to get it back over here floating like it was, I can click and drag and I can drop it in there, and that will cause it to dock back over on the right. If that bothers you that it's not in the right order, you can move them around. So there's a lot of configuration you can do here. Now, Illustrator also has what are called workspaces, and that's this menu I was messing around with earlier. These workspaces are a set of panels and a layout for the screen that the folks at Adobe have decided this is kind of a common set. So if we're just going to be doing painting in Illustrator, we can use this painting workspace, which you can see gives us several additional panels that weren't there before. And then it actually gives us this second column of panels that has a bunch of other things like a navigator and an info and a transparency and an align panel. So there's a whole bunch of things here that are opened up when we switch to this painting workspace. I can switch to the typography workspace, and that actually takes me to this setting where I've got character and paragraph panels and artboards and all this other stuff. Which of these you actually use depends on what you're doing in the program. But a nice thing is you can't break these. So I'm going to come back to my Essentials panel. I'm going to tear this Properties panel out and close it. I'm going to grab my Libraries panel, and I want to move it until I get a little blue bar here. So now it's taking up a second column. And then I'm going to just open up some additional panels seemingly at random. Not seemingly, I'm doing this totally at random. Oops, there's the Properties again. Well, whatever. Okay, so now my screen's a mess. And I want to just kind of clean it up quickly. I want to get back to where I started. So to do that, I can just come up here to this menu and I can choose Reset Essentials. And that will just take me back to that saved interface. So don't worry about breaking your interface. You can always reset it. But I do recommend that you play around with things here and see how stuff works. So that's it for this video. Continue on to the next one where we're going to explore the tools and talk about navigating around in a document in Illustrator.